This Wednesday, the 27th of January, marks Holocaust Memorial Day. This year we are marking the 76th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi death camp. We remember the 6 million Jews who were barbarically murdered in the Holocaust, alongside the lives of millions of people who were also killed under Nazi persecution. With heavy hearts, we also remember many others, including those who tragically lost their lives in other genocides that occurred in Cambodia, Armenia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and Sri Lanka.
The Holocaust threatened the very fabric of civilization, and genocide must still be resisted every day. Our world feels fragile and vulnerable much too often, and we cannot be complacent. Even in the UK, prejudice and the language of hatred is still rife, and must be challenged by us all. Uyghur Muslims in the Chinese province of Xinjiang have faced years of persecution and cultural repression, and are now being held in secret detention or re-education camps, and are experiencing what would be classified as a genocide. This is something that we cannot turn a blind eye to, and as individuals and as a community must condemn and respond to.
The theme for Holocaust Memorial Day 2021, as set out by the Holocaust Educational Trust, is Be the Light in the Darkness. The aim is to encourage everyone to reflect on the depths humanity can sink to, but also the ways individuals and communities resisted the darkness, to be the light before, during and after the Holocaust.
Every Holocaust survivor has a unique story of how they survived. No one survived by doing nothing or the people around them doing nothing. There was always a miraculous event or person or divine coincidence that ultimately saved their life and enabled them to go on. You are now going to hear from Dahlia and Tammy, the granddaughters of 2 Holocaust survivors, to recount their testimonies of their grandparents and about what was their light in the darkness.
My grandma, Genia Rappaport, was born on the 23rd of January 1934 in Radom, Poland. On the 1st of September 1939, when my grandma, who we called Sufta, was just 5 years old, the Nazis invaded Poland. Life immediately became very restrictive, with total loss of liberties and rights. And as a result of the occupation, in March 1941, aged 7, Sufta, her parents and all other Jews were forced into the Radom ghetto, where home for Sufta and her parents became a small empty storeroom behind a drapery store. Life was extremely difficult in the ghetto. Food was scarce, there was a lack of basic hygiene, and disease became rife. With conditions worsening within the ghetto, my grandma's parents decided they had to find a way to get Sufta out. So in July 1942, late at night, Sufta was smuggled out of the ghetto through a small barricaded shop window into the arms of a Polish policeman who had been bribed by Sufta's father. He took Sufta to the outskirts of Warsaw, to the Grudzinski family. Sufta was hidden within the Grudzinski household from the Nazis for the next 2 years and 9 months. By day she remained hidden behind a cupboard door, and by night she slept in the stable. Sufta stayed with the Grudzinskis, who treated her like family until the end of the war. Sufta then became part of a group of 12 orphans who, with American-assisted funding, travelled overland across 4 countries, arriving by boat into Haifa in August 1945. All arriving passenger names were read out on national radio, and amazingly, Sufta was reunited with her father, who had survived the Shoah and ended up in the British Army serving in Egypt. Sadly, and as for so many of European Jewry, Sufta never saw her mother again and lost 48 relatives. This short summary of my grandma's survival of the Holocaust pays tribute to the extreme kindness of the Grudzinski family, who took my grandma in whilst putting their own life at risk. They were the light in Sufta's darkness, and for this they were recognised as righteous amongst the nations by Yad Vashem, receiving a Medal of Valor. Sufta, along with other members of my family, were at this ceremony in 2001 and were able to thank them themselves, and her trip back to meet them was recorded in a film documenting her story called The Power of Goodness. Sufta had always kept in touch with the Grudzinskis, and she never forgot what sacrifice they
made. Both of my paternal grandparents are Holocaust survivors. They are 2 of millions of people, human beings, who survived the worst kinds of torture seen in humankind, and they are also 2 of many more millions who tragically lost huge numbers of relatives and loved ones who were murdered by the Nazis. My grandfather, Ernst Israel Bornstein, grew up in Zawiercie, Poland, and was talented and well educated. the eldest of 4 siblings in a close-knit family. When the Germans invaded in 1939, he was 17 and conscripted into forced labour 2 years later. He was then incarcerated in 7 concentration camps. He was saved many times by a series of special people who gave him the hope of the future through small conversations or tiny bits of food, which saved his life amidst the degradation, humiliation, and dehumanization that was camp life. These people were flashes of light in the pits of complete darkness. More details on his story will be addressed on Wednesday afternoon by Alain Bornstein, my father, his son, who is coming to speak. My grandmother Renée grew up in Strasbourg, France, and then moved to the small town of Saint-Junien with her parents, older sister Helen, and younger brother Joël. She lived a happy childhood, but life changed in the year that the Nazis occupied France. Daily life for little Renée was filled with disappearing friends, the constant fear of roundups, and sudden fleeing into hiding at a moment's notice. As the Nazis' grip tightened, Renée's parents, my great-grandparents, knew that they could not survive like this for much longer, so they made the agonising decision to send their 3 children away to Switzerland for safety. They were given false papers and travelled as part of a group of other so-called non-Jewish children, all in the same situation. The young Jewish children were hidden in a Catholic convent, forced to adopt entire new identities, and told daily that they would go to hell if they chose to remain Jewish. My grandmother and her 2 siblings stuck together, and they distinctly remember their group leader, Marianne Kohn, who was a resistance worker, herself only the tender age of 21. She dazzled them with her smile, reassured them, and she really was the sole light in their lives. Their hopes for their future, dreams of seeing their parents again, and aspirations for a potential life ahead lay in her fragile hands. They were taken by her to the next step of their journey, and en route they were arrested by the Gestapo and imprisoned, where they were questioned at gunpoint by the chief commandant. They saw their young friends being beaten, one being beaten to death, and their beloved Marianne, who led and protected them, being a mother, father, family and community for them, tortured every day, eventually to be murdered by the Nazis. 2 weeks after the beginning of their incarceration, the Lord Mayor of Annemasse, the town where they were being kept, Jean Defont, was able to negotiate their freedom, and eventually they were taken to a refugee centre. The mayor was another person who was the light to my grandmother in the most intense darkness. He saved her life and gave her a future. Though she was never able to fully be a child again, her, together with my grandfather, built a wonderful family, and today my grandmother proudly stands strong and defiant. She got the ultimate revenge on the Nazis. She lived and had a family. Her 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren are the light in her life today.
The light that was brought to Tammy and Dahlia's grandparents, as well as to millions of other persecuted people who were in the depths of darkness, is what we remember this Holocaust Memorial Day. It's our responsibility not only to educate about the Holocaust and to sanctify the memory of victims of genocides, but also to learn from this and to be able to grow as people. There are so many core life lessons that we can take from events in history and from this year's theme of being the light in the darkness.
Today, darkness can be many things. It can be the darkness of denial and distortions of genocide, both past and present, through blatant rejection of truth or by warped historical revisionism. Darkness is also particularly apparent in identity-based prejudice and hostility today towards many different minorities.
As individuals, it may seem difficult to be the light in today's darkness, but what we can do is shine light on the testimonies, and we can confront distortion, misinformation and denial wherever we see it. When you hear the testimony from a Holocaust survivor, whether it is from them directly or secondhand, you are now a witness. You bear the responsibility to pass on their message to others. When you hear this week's testimonies, begin by passing on their messages to your parents, siblings, and your friends outside of school. Another way that you can be the light is to be the person who challenges untruths wherever you encounter them. Be this in conversation with someone that you know or something that you see online. Dangerous myths and hate-fueled conspiracies blame and demonize people based solely on their identity. This is something that we need to open our eyes to and something that we shine a light on.
Let this Holocaust Memorial Day inspire and encourage you to be the light in a world that seems so often to be shrouded in darkness. Strive to educate yourself on the atrocities of the past. Ask questions, and whilst you may never have all the answers, you will have learnt and grown along the way. Bring the light of truth, as well as the light of kindness, into your lives and into the lives of everyone around you. We can all choose to be the light in the darkness.
Thank you so much for listening to the Assembly today. We understand that the Holocaust is a difficult thing to fully comprehend, but we hope that you've internalised everything you've learnt today and throughout the rest of the week, and educate yourself and others on it. This week, we are privileged to host 3 speakers to help mark National Holocaust Memorial Day. We will be sending out an email detailing the plans for these speakers and all the other Holocaust-related activities in all the other societies this week and the next. We hope to see you all there. Thank you.